The following program and contents, including the views and opinions expressed by the host and any guest speakers, are solely for informational and entertainment purposes. The views and opinions expressed are not endorsed or supported by rel-mar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, their employees, affiliates, or advertisers. The host and guest speakers are solely responsible for their own perspectives, and their views do not reflect those of rel-mar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, their employees, affiliates, or advertisers. The information provided in this program should not be considered as professional advice or as a substitute for professional consultation. Listeners and viewers are encouraged to form their own opinions and seek independent advice when necessary. rel-mar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, their employees, affiliates, and advertisers hereby disclaim any liability for any claims, damages, or losses incurred as a result of the information presented in this program.
Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
Mission Evolution is coming to you on the X-Zone Broadcast Network and X-Zone TV on Simul TV Channel 32 from our broadcast studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. This hour will address reawakening, finding the torch within. Many are looking for someone or something to inspire them. Could it be we're searching for creativity in all the wrong places? Could it be that instead of looking outside of ourselves for something to set fire to our passion, it can only be ignited from within? With us this hour to explore the evolution of the human spirit is Lance Secretan. His website, secretan.com. Lance, thanks for joining us on Mission Evolution.
Great to be with you, Gwilda. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, it's a real pleasure. It's a real pleasure. Tell us a little about yourself, Lance.
Oof. I'm old, so there's a lot to say. Let's see. Probably in a nutshell, I'm Canadian. I used to run a company called Manpower Limited. We built that from scratch to 70,000 employees, and then I became a university professor when I retired. I wrote a book because all the books at the university were junk, and it became a bestseller. And then people started asking me to come and work with them, and that's what I've been doing for the last 40 years, and I've been working with some of the top companies on the planet.
So, Lance, whatever inspired you to get into inspiration?
Well, one of the things I've noticed, Gwilda, is that we spend $170 billion a year on leadership development. We have 240,000 books on leadership. We have every MBA program, every consultant, every public speaker, motivational speaker, they're all talking about leadership. And take a look around. It's a mess. It's broken everywhere. And if I can share with you an example, I got an email this morning inviting me to attend a webinar. The webinar was how to build teamwork and culture using analytics and engagement surveys. Now, supposing I come home and I sit down with my spouse and I say, honey, we're going to build better teamwork and culture together. We're going to focus on analytics and engagement surveys.
Oh, be still my beating heart.
What do you think she'd say? I mean, it just goes to show you how dopey we've become. We simply do not understand what it takes to lift up people. And so where I am these days is that I've concluded that the whole idea of leadership, which fundamentally is a motivation, fear-based idea, the theories are based on those principles, is obsolete. It's not working. And what really needs to replace that is inspiration. I don't know about you, but I don't need anybody leading me. What I need is to be inspired. If you inspire me, I'll do anything.
Do you think that the people have just changed so much that the old way of leadership is absolutely not working for them?
Well, I think COVID probably has been quite helpful here in this sense because it's brought people face to face with the reality of what's going on in their lives. And so many people, as you know, do not want to go to work anymore. As a matter of fact, 80% of the population dreads going to work on Monday morning. 80% of the population would quit their day jobs if they had a free choice. What's that tell us about what we've accomplished here? It's a mess.
And you think about how much time we spend at work. 80% of
Of
the people are
course.
miserable for that much of their lives.
Right. Absolutely. So, what we're looking for is inspiration. Inspiration comes from a different place, it comes from love. So, to be clear, motivation comes from fear, inspiration comes from love. Business, and I don't mean to focus only on business, and that's one of the changes that's happened in my life is that I'm focusing much more broadly now than just corporate life because I think it's really about people. But when you think about this, we don't need to be frightened anymore. We don't need to be coerced and badgered and intimidated into behaving. And you know how it goes in leadership and in human resource policy. What we're actually doing is saying, this is code, we're saying, do this and we'll get a gift, and do this and you'll get punished. Well, that's Pavlov. I mean, we haven't learned anything in 120 years.
Yeah, classical
So,
conditioning at its finest.
yeah. So, what we actually need is inspiration, which is if I can put it this way to you, motivation is lighting a fire under someone, and inspiration is lighting a fire within someone.
Hmm.
And there's a big difference.
I like that, under someone or within. This is kind of a new way of approaching. What kind of reception have you seen? Because it
I
seems to
think
me
that,
like people's
yes, but
egos,
it's
leaders these days.
safe to say that traditional thinkers aren't moving very fast on this. You've probably seen in the news how many companies are absolutely insisting that employees come back to the office. And employees are saying, hello, I've been working from home for 3 weeks. Why are you asking me to do this? Nothing went wrong during that time. What's up? So it's just a tone deaf approach to what actually is needed. These are human beings. One of the things we've done, Gwilda, is we've created a situation where we have an alien world in business. It's not the same as everything else. We use language there that we don't use anywhere else. We use phrases and acronyms and buzzwords and so on nowhere else. We talk about being accountable. And I often relate this to domestic life. If I came home and said, okay, honey, I'm going to hold you accountable, where do you think I'd be?
In the
I,
doghouse, probably, sir.
yeah, absolutely. And the same thing with performance appraisals. Hi, honey, we're going to have a little conversation about your performance last year and do some forecasting for next year and a little 360 review and get some feedback from your colleagues. I mean, you wouldn't get 4 words out of your mouth. This is what we've done. We've created something that we would never accept anywhere else in our lives.
And isn't this also being perpetrated, and I like that word for it, in the school system? The rules, regs, and policies are designed around the corporation of the schools, not the needs of the children.
Yes. And it's not just about business. I mean, business is kind of the driving force because what we learn at work, we bring home. And we also spread it into other places like not for profits and government and healthcare and academia and so on. So we basically run these organizations the same way. And I've seen many leaders, for example, running their homes the same way. They have strategic plans, they have 5-year plans, they have mission statements, all that stuff. So, it's pervasive, it's everywhere.
There's no heart in it either. That is what distresses me. There's no compassion, there's no heart.
I would say there's no soul.
Hmm.
It's even bigger than the heart because it's really about the spiritual nature of who we are and how we attend to that. If we were doing a better job of that, imagine we'd be on fire. We would be so excited and passionate about what we're doing if someone would make a connection with us at that level.
Aren't we, though, conditioned into it being negative? I mean, we say about the leaders having to change, but what about the employees and your normal person? Their father hated their job, ergo, you're not working unless you hate it. There's kind of that no pain, no gain kind of attitude within the workers, I would think.
Yes, I think within a certain age group, but I think if you look at some of the younger folks, especially those who are bailing and then bailing the work world and becoming, for example, influencers or building businesses on the internet, on TikTok and on YouTube. So, we have a young group of people who are saying, this model's not working for me. Now that's kind of serious for us because we're going to lose some of the best talent we've got. And if we don't recover that, we'll be in big trouble. I hear that one of the new chip factories that's being built by a Taiwanese company, they're saying they're going to import Chinese workers because they can't find enough Americans.
Hmm. Hmm. We're really changing what we will and won't put up with, it looks like.
That's right. That's what the Great Resignation's been about.
Pretty amazing.
Yeah, and
So,
wonderful to see.
I'm sorry?
Wonderful to see because it's making people pay attention.
Well, obviously, change is needed. If 80% of the people are miserable at work and
Right.
they have to spend what percentage of their time do people spend at work?
What percentage of their time?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think there's the debates on this. Depends what we're talking about. Do you mean at work or do you mean altogether? Because a lot of people, when they're on vacation, are answering their email.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think broadly we can say it is still a 40-hour week, basically. A lot of people work a lot more than that. A few, I think, work less, but not many. I think most people work at least that many and sometimes more.
Do you think that technology has started to initiate this change?
Well, yes, I think the technology has been unfortunate in the past, but I think it's now being leveraged in a different way. For example, Zoom is an amazing push forward for flexible work arrangements for people. But honestly, it's not just about the workplace. It's about how I relate with you, Gwilda. I mean, I don't want to relate with you with a performance appraisal or an engagement survey or analytics. I want our hearts to connect.
And you think that can happen over Zoom?
Yeah, I do. And not only that, but I think we have to be quite clear that this is just the beginning. Zoom was around before, but if you remember, it's only 3 years ago we were having horrible conference calls that were falling apart, and we were dropping calls, and it was hard to hear people, and so on. Zoom came along, and then COVID, and so Zoom took off like a rocket. And they had, I should think, in about 2 or 3 months, they did about 10 years of research. Now, imagine Zoom with artificial intelligence, with 3D, virtual reality.
We're going to have to pick up on all of that, and that's a very good point on the other side of a station break.
Okay.
Lance and I will return very shortly, so don't go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Are you interested in evolving with the times and becoming all you can be? Don't you wish there was one place to find the latest information to help guide you through the process? I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, host of Mission Evolution Radio TV. Join me on my mission to find the latest evolutionary knowledge and tools. The guests on Mission Evolution are leading experts in a wide variety of divergent topics, including allopathic, holistic, and integrative medicine, epigenetics, enlightenment, quantum physics, meditative practices, environmental issues, spiritual evolution, trauma healing, and so much more. Mission Evolution Radio TV is aired worldwide through the X-Zone Broadcast Network, X-Zone TV Channel 32 on Simul TV. You can enjoy our archives of radio or TV shows with our compliments at www.missionevolution.org. Come see the amazing lineup of guests and topics. With more than 200 episodes to choose from, you're sure to find what you're looking for. Visit www.missionevolution.org. What does it take to inspire you? With us this hour discussing The Torch Within is Lance Secretan. Lance, we were just starting to talk about the artificial intelligence and Zoom and way things are moving forward and how it's affecting people. Would you mind continuing with that?
Yeah, I just think we need to imagine, Gwilda, what the future will look like. If you think about how quickly we've evolved, just in, the iPhone came out in 2007. It's amazing, how many we've got coming up for what, 13 of them now, and so on. It's almost like we never knew it wasn't there. And that's just one example. Zoom is another example of how that has accelerated. Shopify, these are companies that have responded very recently. They're new. So just extrapolate that out into the future. Look at AI. AI, you've never heard of AI a few months ago. Now it's all over the place and everybody's using it. So I imagine Zoom with artificial intelligence, virtual reality. I think I could touch you, be in the room that you're in. I think it'll be amazingly immersive. I think we're just going to invent this and it's coming.
There is an argument that we put out more than just our image and our voice, that energetically we also have a field around us that interacts with the fields around other people. Have you looked into that? What's your take on
Sure.
that?
Absolutely. And I agree with you. What we have not determined is whether we can do that as we are now. I mean, if you can do it with the radio signal, why couldn't we do it now? We're emitting electrical signals, all of us. So maybe you hear mine, or maybe it comes in the combination of words that we use together, or the tone, or the music of our voices. We don't know how this happens. The science hasn't proven yet. So I think, yes, I think we can do this.
So, what would you say? It seems like people are going through something quite different than they have in times past. What would you say is the predominant experience going on right now
In the workplace,
in the world?
in the world, the predominant experience in the world, well, I think it's sadness right now.
Mm.
I think there's an enormous sense of concern and helplessness. We have an epidemic of opioids, of course, crisis, but we also have epidemic of suicides and loneliness.
Mm.
And we are getting worse, not better. So all of the trappings of life that we have and we've created, and we're so brilliant at doing so many of these, it haven't really helped that. So what would it take to help that? It takes people who are compassionate and caring and loving. In fact, it takes a conversion of the work experience, but for that matter, all experiences, retail, for example, and so on, into a spiritual experience. We are, after all, spiritual beings having a human experience.
The one argument I've heard and wonder about, seriously wonder about, is the thought that technology is actually creating this isolation. You see people, or they're sitting at the
Yeah,
table, dinner table, and everybody's doing this.
yeah.
So, what's your stance on that?
Well, I think we may look back on the cell phone, for example, as a pretty archaic idea. I mean, by the time we have chips planted into us and we can just speak anytime we want to, we won't be looking at anything. And if it's on our glasses, like the Google glasses of some years ago, which is a technology that's coming, Apple has already is working on that. So we'll basically have a new dimension available to us beyond the one that we've been used to. It's important to remember this. I researched this years ago. Work, the word work, is a new word. We didn't go to work in the past. It wasn't until the 1600s that we started building factories and places to go somewhere. But up until then, if you were a blacksmith, it was in your back of your house. We didn't go anywhere. And if you got hungry, you went out and got a deer. So work was invented in the 1600s, and we've created it. Now, what happened was we actually ended up going from home to a place where we worked. COVID came along. We're going from a place where you work back home. In other words, we are simply rewinding 500 years, where this is our natural place.
The other argument is the massive changes that happened on the planet when everybody was isolated and not driving around and this and that. The wildlife came back in force,
Right.
and we're worried, and rightfully so, about our impact on the environment and global warming, et cetera, et cetera. It would appear to me that people working from their home would go a long ways towards alleviating some of it.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely.
are you in that stance too?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
So what's the objection? Wouldn't it be cheaper for the companies to not have to maintain these huge high rises with the cubicles and, what's
Not
the
to mention,
objection?
not to mention the fact that we could solve our housing crisis by converting downtown buildings. And even now, New York City is about 50% vacant. So, and I tell you what, I don't want to be a commercial landlord. That's for sure. I think that's the worst business in the world right now. So it's going to be painful. You're absolutely right. That's what we should be doing. And we're clinging to very old-fashioned ideas, just as we used to with the industrial. When we moved from factory to the office, we were still using factory ideas,
Mhm.
time clocks and so on. And so we're doing the same thing now. We're just stuck in a 1970s, 1980s kind of mode of thinking, and we haven't caught up. And new leaders will, though. And that's the great hope. New leaders will do this. Young people realize this is silly. We can do this much better.
Isn't there an issue that people have been conditioned to being under scrutiny in the office, where if they're at home, they may not be as productive? Is that part of the fear, and is that a reality?
Yes, I heard a story the other day, Gwilda, from a colleague of mine, a giant consulting firm. I mean, big, 800,000 employees. He's a monster. And he hired an ex-employee there. And she had this twitch where she was shaking her hand all the time. And he said, "Why have you got this twitch? What's that?" And he said, "Well, she said, the company I used to work for monitors my keyboard. So I have to keep moving my hand on my keyboard all the time in order to make sure they think I'm working." This
Hmm.
is what we've created, Gwilda. This is the nightmare that is facing people. They don't want to be part of that. But this is what's going on in the workplace with old-fashioned thinkers. And explain the logic of this. What is the thinking that's going on? Just because you move your hand around doesn't mean you're productive. But she was so neurotic and so burned out and so traumatized by this experience, she couldn't even stop it. It was a tick.
There's, been reports over the past 10 years or more about the brutality of the treatment of people in large corporations, how they burn people out, toss them out, and get somebody new. Do you still see this going on? And how can we shift that?
Well, it's interesting you ask this question because I think it points to many things in many parts of our lives. Everything we're very very left brain science based thinkers. We always say, "Where's the evidence? Where's the data? Where's the Excel spreadsheet?" You can't do that with sunsets or poetry or symphonies or falling in love or making love. I mean, these are things that don't lend themselves to a spreadsheet. So what we've done in business in particular, and it's spread, as I say, everywhere else. So business is the engine, but it's everywhere, is we have made everything analytical. I mean, I don't know about you, but every time I see some sport, it's always about the statistics.
Hmm.
Nobody's talking about the beautiful play, the stunning moves that people make and so on, or the relationships that people have with each other. It's all about 2-0 or 15 all or whatever, and then it's all about the money. How much did they pay for this player and so on? That's what we've created. So that's not a spiritual world, as you would know. And therefore, we want to move in a different direction. And that's the direction that lights our fires. Money doesn't.
We're exactly. We're immersed in it though, and have been for generations. How do you see starting to shift this?
Well, I try not to be or get myself into a situation where I'm disappointed. So I don't want to work with a company that has no interest in doing this. It's too hard work. So and there's too many opportunities to work with other people that do want to go this way. So I look for signals from companies or people. I need to grow. I need to change. This environment for me is not working. I know we can do this better. If you're on that path, there's so much we can do. So the answer to the question is we've got to find the low-hanging fruit, the people that are really interested in making an evolution, to use your term, and it's an evolution into the spiritual journey. But after all, work should be a spiritual experience.
Well, we've been talking about spirit and being spiritual, and we have a little bit of time left in this segment. Would you define what you mean by that? I mean, there's a lot of different meanings to that word.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can. I think it was Voltaire who said the vaults of 6,000 years will not reveal the secrets of what the soul is about. Well, it's kind of like St. Augustine said, I know what time is, but I can't describe it. And it's kind of like that, isn't it? We know what time is. I know I'm quite clear about what time is, but I can't tell you exactly what it is. It's the same with leadership, by the way, which is why we can't teach it. How can you teach something you can't define? You know, I used to teach this stuff, and I've written 24 books about leadership, so I should be scolded for promoting all this rubbish. But you know, I'm on the road to Damascus now, so I'm converted.
If we're trying to bring spirit into a situation, but we can't define it or know what it is, that's kind of difficult, isn't it?
It is, but we know what it isn't. And so what we can do is make sure that we are focusing on removing the things that in our view would not be evolutionary or spiritual. In other words, if I hurt you, that's going contrary to what my soul is hungry for.
So we've been talking, you know, off and on about, you know, what it looks like in corporations. And again, we're about out of time in this segment, but doesn't the corporations are made of the people, and the people are made of the families, and the families are made of the interior condition of the individual. Do we work with the corporations, or do we take it back to the individual to start to make a change?
Yeah, excellent question. I think it's the individual. I think we have to be clear that if we want to achieve anything anywhere, not just in the corporate world, but anywhere, like passing an exam at school, anywhere, or in an athletic performance, you need the passion and the desire and the intentionality. And if you don't have that, nothing's going to happen. So if somebody just says to you, Gwilda, I want you to write down these 4 words, you're going to say, okay, well, if you pay me the salary and I'm an employee, I'll do that. But I don't really understand why I'm doing it.
But I'll do it. You know, I'm sorry, we're going to have to leave a cliffhanger here and pick up on the other side of a station break. Lance and I will be back to continue this discussion. So you stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com.
simultv.com.
This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. Where has all your passion gone? With us discussing reawakening the human spirit is Lance Secretan. His website, secretan.com. Lance, we were talking about whether the change needs to happen with a corporation or if we need to look at bringing it through the individual. Would you mind continuing with that?
Yeah, let me walk you through the what I think of as the right process. First of all, I've written and researched a lot about leaders and trying to find out what makes them tick, what was special about them, particularly leaders like Martin Luther King and Gandhi and so on. And they had a following. So, how many CEOs have a following? That's the sort of thing that I'm trying to see. What was the secret there? Well, here's what I discovered. First of all, you need to become inspired yourself. It's very hard to inspire other people if you're not full. So you can't come from an empty place. You can fake it for a while, and we all have to, but it doesn't last, and it's not forever. So the first step is to become inspired, and we do that by understanding what is our destiny, what is our calling, and what is our character. Those are three things. We call that the why we do. Secondly, building inspiring relationships, and one of the most important parts of that is to remove the language of war from our vocabulary. You'd be amazed at how often we say something will blow us away, or let's destroy the competition, or let's nuke that, or that's the bomb. You're drop dead beautiful, Gwilda, and so on. We do this all the time in our phrases. This is toxic language, and it's destroying us. And lastly, to be inspired, we need a dream. Everybody needs a dream. Now look, if we know why we're here on the planet, every great leader knew that. We have a dream, and we use the language of love, not war. We will fill up our own tank. Now we can go to others and inspire them. And let me just tell you quickly what that looks like. Years ago, we asked people, what do they not like about people? And here's what they said. We don't like cowards. We don't like phony people. We don't like people who are selfish and self-serving. We don't like people who rule with fear. We don't like people who lie. And we don't like people who are incompetent. So we said, okay, that's 6 things. This is not rocket science. Let's do the opposite. The opposite is courage, authenticity, service, truthfulness, love, and effectiveness. That's an acronym for CASTLE. We call these the CASTLE principles. And we love people, Gwilda, who are courageous, who are authentic, who serve others, who tell the truth, are loving and effective. If we live the CASTLE principles, we'll be inspiring. And if we start from a place where we have our own well filled with inspiration, we'll be the inspiring person we want other people to be.
It sounds like there's a lot of internal work to be
Oh,
done, a
it's
lot
all
of soul searching, a lot of evolving, if you will, before you can even dream to become an effective leader.
Yes, absolutely. It's all about the inner job, isn't it? I mean, leadership is an inside job. But I also want to just make sure we understand what leadership is, because you're leading now in this role. You're leading me. And your engineers lead me at times too, helping me with mics and so on. And as a partner or as a parent, we're leaders. Even in the schoolyard at 6 years old, we're still a leader. Sometimes we're leaders, sometimes someone else is a leader, but we all have roles in various parts of our lives. If you're in a supermarket and you want some advice, there's a clerk in the store that's going to be your leader for a while. So leadership needs to be understood in the broadest context. It's not just a C-suite thing.
It seems to me that so many people historically have attached their ego to being the leader rather than having any concern whatsoever about who they're leading and how effective they are as a leader. It's just like this, I'm the leader kind of approach. And it's almost rampant. I mean, it's, like an epidemic out there that leaders think that because if they can take a position of leadership, that gives them self-worth. Would you speak to that a little bit? How can we turn that around?
It's very addictive, Gwilda. I've been a CEO of a Fortune 100 company. I know how addictive it is. I know when I quit, suddenly I was shaking babies' hands and, having photo op thing. I wasn't doing anything important anymore. I mean, it was like the next day, you're toast. So that whole imagery, that persona, that, the chauffeurs and the private jets and the big money and all that stuff, very addictive, very addictive. If you're saying, give all that up, you want to inspire people, that's a big deal for a lot of people. So they get into a place where they just can't get out. I actually talked to a CEO who's told me, look, Lance, I'm only here for 5 years. So I don't need to disrupt everything and change everything and start all over. I don't need to do that. In 5 years, I'll be gone. It won't matter. That's what.
5 wasted years then, huh?
Yeah. But meanwhile, all the boxes are being checked with the quarterly reports and the earnings and the shareholders and all that stuff. That's all happening. What's not happening is people are not inspired.
Mm. And therefore, ultimately, whatever they're putting out there is not inspired. It's not of great value. It's
So
just
true. And
more of the
the
same.
first thing I say, most of my clients are wonderful companies. So Microsoft, Starbucks, Kaiser Permanente, Humana, BP, great companies. And I always, when I start working with a company like that, I always say to them, you are an amazing outfit. I mean, really, you're fantastically successful. Look at Starbucks. I mean, look at Microsoft. Amazing. What would it be like if everybody was inspired? I mean, just a quantum leap in what would happen. Not to mention the joy and the happiness and the soulfulness that would occur amongst people.
We've been talking mostly about the role of the leader.
Mm.
What about the role of the follower? It also appears to me, because I've been both, right? I've headed my own company and headed my own school and this and that. And one of the pitfalls, it seemed to me like if you are a powerful leader, you end up with children underneath you, waiting for you to make all the decisions and coming from a place of victim, that their wherewithal, their future depends on your actions. Let's speak a little bit to the followers. Are they in victim? What's going on there?
Well, the follower, typically, this is a generic statement, there are lots of exceptions, but typically followers see themselves as followers. In fact, they should see themselves as leaders. Because I can be, as I was, a hotshot, powerful CEO of a major Fortune 100 company. But you take away all the people that reported to me, and I'm nothing. So, I can brag about my wonderful position and all my money and cars and what have you, but it makes no sense at all without the importance of people. So who do I go to then for the support I need to get what I need done? And frankly, we need to rethink that. My spouse is a leader in lots of ways. And I defer to that person for decision-making in a bunch of areas. And that's shared, right? And that's how it should be in organizations and families, and for that matter, not-for-profits, healthcare, academia, and all the rest of it, police too. And what happens when we do this leader, in quotes, follower, in quotes, is we create a hierarchy. And people don't like hierarchies.
And they don't function well in them either. It
Well,
disables both sides of the coin, doesn't it?
Yeah, and they're not inspiring. I don't want to be a peasant. Right?
Exactly. So, but the other side of it is, and I personally am very passionate about the leadership that is something like a goose. Okay. When you see a flock of geese flying, there's a lead goose. But they take turns because the lead goose is pushing
Right.
the envelope for everybody else, and they just take turns, and it works.
Right.
I'm very big on that. I can see the power of it, but within that, do we suddenly water down the leadership? Do we suddenly disperse the forward momentum as human beings trying to do that?
I don't think so. There's nothing wrong with the way geese fly. They're very successful doing that, and they share the leadership responsibilities. Tell me, in a flock of geese, who's the leader? The leader, I think, is the one in the front for the time being, but the others play a role too. Who's keeping the formation? Who's keeping up the back? I mean, there's lots of decisions being made. It's not just about the leader. And it's a collective leadership, and that's what we're actually looking for. That's what communes are about. That's what some of the great co-ops are about. Some of the greatest companies in the world, like the leading co-op in Spain, for example, they're cooperatives, and they don't have that kind of leadership structure. They function in a different way. It's one of the biggest organizations on the planet.
And then, but that's the argument I do hear against cooperative leadership is that, oh, we'll suddenly not have a strong leadership and things will start getting scattered and fall apart. What's been your experience with that?
Caca del Toro. I just don't think it's true. I think that's just an illusion that comes from a very fixed paradigm in your head about how you think this all works, and it's not current, it's not contemporary. It's not what we're looking for, Gwilda. You don't want someone like that breathing down your neck all day long. That's why people are quitting.
It seems to me like we have bred a more independent youth in a certain way.
Yes.
I know that in some ways we've enabled them, and there's a little ways they need to go to have the resilience they need. But also they've become pretty independent, haven't they?
Yes, but I recoil from pigeonholing by age, like Generation X and Y and all the rest of it, because I'm from the silent generation. What does that make me? I mean, so what? What difference does that make? You don't know anything about whether I'm technically competent, what I know about technology, whether I write or whether I'm educated. You don't know that. Just labeling me as a silent generation member means nothing. So I think that we need to get out of that. Yes, we have empowered these young people, and thank goodness they're going to save us, because by the look of it, old people are not going to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We definitely need to find some new inspiration and new way of doing things, because everything is moving very quickly right now, and I see a lot of things falling apart.
Yes.
It's not a bad thing, though, is it?
Well, it's who we are, right? That's the question in the end. I teach my students, I teach this work all the time in master classes, and I teach my students this idea. And the question I ask them is this: what are you teaching when you're not speaking? Now think about that. If you're not speaking, what's happening? I use the example, if the Dalai Lama walked into the room that you and I are in, sat down in the corner, spent 15 minutes there, silently, didn't say anything, then got up and left, we'd be inspired. Why?
And again, we're going to have to answer that question on the other side of a station break. Please stay with us as Lance and I continue to explore the evolution of inspiration. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Do you have a product or service you'd like to promote to a worldwide audience? Imagine your product featured on Mission Evolution Radio TV. If you're interested in showcasing your work, Mission Evolution is broadcast to the X-Zone TV Channel 32 Simul TV, on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, YouTube, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Audible, and many other audio and social media platforms. Our professional studios can produce and broadcast your custom high-quality ad. It will be permanently embedded in each episode and featured in the archives for years to come. Together, we can make it happen. Contact us at info@missionevolution.org for more details. Spaces are limited, so don't miss out on this great opportunity. Email info@missionevolution.org today. Has all the fire left your life? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org, and we are discussing the Dalai Lama, believe it or not. Our guest is Lance Secretan, and his website is secretan.com. Lance, you were speaking about how if we were sitting in silence and the Dalai Lama walks in, we all sit quietly together and he walks out, yet people are left inspired. Would you go on with that, please?
Yeah, and so the question becomes, what is that? And the answer is, it's who we are. We don't teach what we know. We teach who we are. And if you just took that idea and played it out over every function, like husband, wife, child, friend, citizen, healthcare worker, physician, CEO, etc., policeman, and so on, play that out. Who we are. I don't know if you've noticed this, but there are cops that you bump into. I'm sure we all do, traffic stops and so on. And sometimes they're amazing, and sometimes they're awful. And they're a cop. They're the same thing in different body, physical form, but one is projecting a quite different energy from the other. What inspires us? We're not inspired when people intimidate us. We're inspired when people love us, care for us, are kind to us, and lift us up and make us feel larger. That's when we're inspired. That's all we need to learn. It's not that difficult. I was in a meeting, Gwilda, many years ago, working with a large company in Colorado. It was a big hospital system. I do a lot of work in healthcare. And by the way, before I tell you that story, there's a shortage of nurses, as you know, in healthcare. I always tell healthcare leaders, there's no shortage of nurses. We probably have trained 10 times as many nurses as we need. There's a shortage of places nurses want to work. That's the problem. And looking at the wrong end of the telescope is not going to solve this problem for us. So anyway, I was standing in this room. It was my first day consulting with this company. 32 CEOs in this room, all running different businesses and organizations. And one guy gets up, his name is Tom Anderson, and he rails into me, Gwilda. He's telling me, you're full of fluff. It's kind of ridiculous. You must be from California. This is all woo-woo, and this is never going to work in this organization, and you better go home. And I'm freaking out because, inside, I'm trying to stay calm on the outside. And I'm thinking, what do I do now? Because this is about a moment when I'm either going to lose a client or we're going to make a breakthrough. I'm not sure which way it goes. I'm hoping for the latter, but it could go the other way. So I said to him, Tom, I think I know what you're trying to say, but could you say it in a way that is inspiring for me? And he said, sure. Stood up, started all over again, said things quite differently. And you can imagine the room, everybody was holding their breath. I didn't know where this was going to go. It looked very, very nasty. And it turned out very well. So the key question I learned in that moment, I sort of taught myself how to do this by stumbling into it. Ask the question, can you say this again in a way that's inspiring? You're fired, Gwilda. Can you say that again in a way that's inspiring? We can do that. We can do that. There are lots of people who will tell you they got fired and it was the best thing that ever happened to them. And they were taken care of and looked after and everything worked out well. And then there are others who say it was just awful and that they were wounded probably for life as a result of that experience. So we have a choice.
Don't we also have a choice the way we take those things, regardless of how they're presented?
Yeah, I agree. I can't add to that. Yeah.
So how has leadership changed in the last 20 years? There's been some big changes. And of course, as we've ascertained over the past hour, there's many more needed. But what's the trend that you're seeing here, Lance?
Well, I think what we've done is we've deepened the scientific method approach to running things, not just business, but everything, even our families. And I think that's been a mistake. And I think we have to come back from that. And I think enlightened people will come back from that because they can see the advantages of that. It doesn't take much, does it, to see what happens when we're inspiring with someone and magic occurs. That doesn't happen with a performance appraisal. That doesn't happen with a dictate to an employee, do this or I'll fire you. It comes from a different place. So if I'm coming from my heart first, and my learning around this is that if I'm inspired, I'll do anything. That's what it takes. I smell a rose because I'm inspired. I go to a movie that inspires me. I go to restaurants that inspires me. I go to work for companies that inspire me. I fall in love with someone that inspires me. And as soon as that inspiration leaves, I'm gone. So the key to everything is inspiration. Inspiration is from the Latin spirare, meaning to breathe. So we're breathing in spirit when we're inspired.
And yet inspiration seems to be one thing that's in short supply in our society today.
Yeah. But let's not be disheartened by that. I think that generally speaking, the majority of the world is in a different place. But there's enough that are not happy with that. And they're seekers. They're looking. They're trying to figure this out. And it's not easy. It's a puzzle. But if we've got a few people working in that direction and they turn out to do things really brilliantly, I would say, by the way, Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, has figured that out. I think they've just lost their way a little bit in the last couple of weeks, but generally speaking, that company is brilliant. And the change has happened since he was there, because they had a kick-ass CEO before that. Satya Nadella comes along. He's a meditator. He's an Eastern spiritual guy. He believes in compassion and kindness and so on. And so he's running a company like that. This is a big company, 500,000 employees. So you can see what happens. So I think a few of those will get some wonderful examples. I would say, by the way, that Amazon is on the other end of the line. And, Amazon is an amazing place in the sense that I can pick up the phone, call, and get something right away. Next day it shows up. Okay, they've done an amazing job with customers. What about employees?
It tends to be one or the other right now, doesn't it? Yeah. So, Lance, it's time in the program when I ask you, what is your mission?
Well, I don't have a mission, because a mission is one of those things that I believe is a cookie cutter thing that everybody else has done. I wrote a book about this. It's called The Bellwether Effect. And basically it's an analysis of the things we do in business that are broken and are upsetting people and causing them to quit. One of those is a mission statement. Because, we go from company A to company B. I tell you a story. I sent 3 mission statements to 3 CEOs of 3 giant corporations, and neither one knew whether they got their own or not. I shuffled them up and sent them the wrong ones, and then they didn't know. They couldn't tell. So I said earlier to you, I don't have a mission. I have a dream. My dream is to create a more inspired world.
Beautiful dream.
Well, that's what inspires us. Dreams. It's not a mission statement. I'm not inspired by mission statements, generally speaking. Some might be inspiring, but generally speaking, no. What's the dream? What's the big thing you're trying to change in the world? How are you going to make the world better? When you leave, will you be able to say, I did well, I made a difference?
You've said something that's pretty interesting. You suggest stress is a myth. It feels pretty real to most of us, and it's even become a diagnosis of sorts. So what do you mean when you say stress is a myth?
Stress?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Stress is a myth. Stress, by definition, is our reaction to a situation. And as Viktor Frankl has told us, there is a gap between the decision and the choice you make. And in that time, you have freedom, the freedom to choose. So somebody cuts you off in the traffic as you're entering the freeway. You can do one of 2 things. You can scream and yell and tell him what an idiot he is and make sure he knows how smart you are and how stupid he is. And you can get yourself all worked up about this. Your blood pressure will go up, you'll start sweating, and you're not. That's stress. Or you can just wave and say, have a nice day. I'm grateful for the life's blessings that I enjoy. That's a choice. I don't need to get riled up about this. I just need to learn to let go.
So I hear you saying stress is a choice, not necessarily a myth.
Correct. And stress management is a typical example of the aspirin approach, topical approach. Doesn't solve anything, just takes away the temporary pain. So you can take a drug or drink or go to a movie or read a book or whatever, and the stress will temporarily go away, but it's still there. I mean, the fact that you screamed at the driver doesn't change if you now have a donut. That doesn't make any difference. You still stressed your body and created a rush of cortisol and adrenaline and so on, which is totally unhealthy for your body.
So Lance, what's your vision for the future if more people become inspired from within?
Well, I dream of a world, and I don't think this is utopian, and I don't think it'll happen overnight, nor everywhere. But I dream of a world where there are a few places where people are enlightened, where they do understand the value of people, where they do address them not as mechanical beings getting a job done or a task or an output, but rather as humans. One of the things, for instance, that I would do in an organization is I would make everybody responsible for the dreams of the employees. If you're cleaning toilets every day, it's very hard to motivate that person. It's a job. If it pays well, they'll keep doing it. But it's not what lights their spirits, lifts their hearts. So what's their dream? And, I've seen cases where, for instance, a woman has a dream of taking her kids to Disneyland. So the manager says, okay, let's make that happen. What does that take? How much does it cost? Let's start saving. Let's put your bonuses aside for that and so on. And I'll be your partner. I'll make that happen for you. That changes toilet cleaning. That's how you inspire people.
Well, it's that magic time. We are out of time in this program altogether. But Lance, it's been wonderful sharing thoughts with you, and thank you so much for coming on the show.
Been great to be with you, Gwilda. Thank you for the good work you're doing too.
Thank you.
All the best.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Our guest this hour has been Lance Secretan. Lance is the author of Reawakening the Human Spirit, Finding the Spark, the Flame, and the Torch Within. His website, secretan.com. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to enjoy our past archived episodes, visit www.missionevolution.org. But most importantly, please be sure to join us right here next time as this mission continues, bringing information, resources, and support to an evolving world.